Good morning and welcome to another edition of Market Outsiders. My name is Namaan. I'm joined by my colleague Jenny Rae. It's Tuesday, May 27th. We hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Jenny Rae, how was your weekend?
Honestly, it was awesome, Naman. I was in the mountains with my family. There was camping, there were coyotes, there was a snake. It was a memorable weekend for nobody got bitten by the snake, which made it even more memorable and happy. Um, but yeah, it was an awesome weekend. Really, I love having boys, but one of the best things about them is feeding them in the woods and running them around in the woods. So that's one of my favorite things about it. What about you? What'd you get up to?
For us, it was a lot of friend time. So we had game night and cookout and all the kind of, just fun Memorial Day weekend kind of things that you do just to relax and recharge. So we weren't out in the woods, but we still got some R&R.
You were in the urban jungle. Um,
Exactly.
Numan, I gotta know what's the big game right now? Actually, I heard a radio advertisement for a game store yesterday, for a store that was thinking about like trying to push the fact that you're like more connected with people if you play over the table board games. And it was there was so many ironies in that, right? It's on the radio. They're not talking about digital games. It's a retail store. Like this was old school in all the ways. So and yeah, I didn't know you played board games. So what was your board game that you were playing? Or was it?
Well, Well, we play multiple games, but a part of the regular rotation is like a house version of Uno, which actually it's funny you asked that because there's an article this morning, I think in the Wall Street Journal, about how Uno is like sweeping the country again and how it's like the number one selling card game in America. And like how people will just go to bars and, they'll pull out a pack of Uno, which is like surprisingly wholesome, and you've just got a game of Uno going at the bars.
At the bar.
We play spicy Uno. We've got our house rules. Maybe one podcast I'll have to break it down, but it's way better than the original.
Oh my
It gets
goodness.
intense.
So yeah, I mean, I would we have to look at some kind of market share for games. All I was thinking was like from a I could understand from a wholesome perspective. Like I love board games, you love board games. How frequently do I buy board games? Not super frequently. And so from a business perspective, if I were in the board game, I just am curious about what's happening in that market right now. And it made me think about it literally yesterday. But again, not everybody takes that from their Memorial Day weekend road trips, right?
I've
But
thought the same thing. And one thing that I've noticed, if we want to talk about kind of bringing business acumen just to everyday life, one thing that I've noticed is that variants of popular games seem to do better than like new games or new product introduction. So you have like now different variants of Uno, you have different add-on packs for Ticket to Ride. And so it seems like the innovation is happening and how can we expand a brand that people already know and love instead of trying to introduce something new to market, which intuitively makes sense to me.
absolutely. Well, Numan, I'm really excited to dive into the convo today. What do you want to do? You want to kick off or you want me to kick off? Because I have something that is in business news, but not market news today.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I'm going to let you go.
Okay. Today is the last day that you can book a flight on Southwest Airlines in the United States for your bags to fly free. So I want to talk a little bit about what would have gone on to tear down this sacred principle that really has defined the growth of Southwest. And many people would say the survival of Southwest during especially rocky periods in the airline's history, such as post 9/11, such as the 2008 financial crisis, and even in COVID in 2020, potentially one of the most challenging situations. And so I just want to talk about a little, how I would have thought about this if I were on the advisory team, trying to understand whether or not this would make sense as a business change. But first, Naman, have you flown Southwest recently, and did you have a bag that flew free?
So I flew Southwest yesterday. I don't usually I don't
Okay,
usually,
that's
yeah,
right.
I don't usually check bags, but one of the things that I've done for kind of my family trips is I pre-booked all of our family trips that we were going to take on Southwest for the rest of the year so that we would be kind of grandfathered into the two bag policy. And so we have the companion pass. My family, we're loyal Southwest flyers. It just makes a lot of sense for us being based in Austin, by far the largest airline in our market.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in that terminal and walked the 6 miles of Southwest
Oh my
flight.
gosh. Yeah.
And trying to figure out on my phone where their gate change has gone and have no idea how to actually track it. But yeah, Southwest is kind of a is and has been a real differentiated brand inside the airline space. So I thought it might be fun to do this through the lens of an article. Are you good if I pull that up this morning? So here we go, right? Final boarding call for free bags at Southwest as airline abandons a cherished perk. I think this is the real question. Is it a cherished perk? Right? So not just a perk that people think about and talk about, which was a big part of how Southwest built mindshare in a originally less consolidated market, but actually, a perk that will cause people to leave if they don't have it. I think that's one of the big questions. And so they did this, right? The airline announced the change in March, saying that the new policy would start with flights booked on Wednesday. I don't know about you. I'm in a couple of Southwest forums. I'm a frequent flyer on all of the majors. And so I've been really interested in following the chatter on these forums. And there is absolutely displeasure. What I think is the real question, and is what I would have thought about if I were running the spreadsheets, is how many people are now not going to fly Southwest because the two bags fly free policy is gone, and how many customers will I have to replace with bag fees, right? So what kind of fair change would that be? Bag fees are absolutely higher margin than flights, right? I would rather have somebody pay for a bag fee than a flight in the first place. But there's something even more treasured in Southwest's mix that they have really not focused on. And I don't know if this has been because they focused on the customer experience and felt like it degraded the customer experience where other airlines leaned into it, but that's credit card subscriptions. And so, when they came out and said this in March, and I feel like we may have even had a hot take. We should go see if we can find that. Back when we did a Strategy Simplified episode on Southwest about how they would make the changes focused on driving up subscriptions to their credit card. But one of my immediate thoughts right after they made the change was, oh, I'm unaffected. I'm unaffected
Same.
because I have a credit card. I'm a frequent flyer on Southwest, and I'm exactly the kind of customer that they cherish, right? I am their cherished customer. And I think that's just they're clearly aligning. Like you who fly on the $29 flights 4 times a year and check two bags and carry another one on, like we are cool, right? We are cool without you. What we would rather have are these full fare paying passengers, and we're working to cater to them. And we're going to encourage people to, if they haven't already, sign up for a Southwest card to get perks that actually matter to them. Because I've actually asked the question, if I didn't have a companion pass, why would I have a Southwest card? The points are not actually massively valuable. I don't have any perks like, early boarding because of the credit card. They've been because of my frequent flyer status. So anyhow, that's really the differentiation. And you can see here, you have to read between the lines though. This doesn't come out super obvious, right? It's the last day to book a flight. So PSA, when this episode drops, if you're watching live, if you haven't booked your flights for the summer, fall, winter, today is the last day that you can book that flight in order to not have a checked bag fee. And honestly, you're probably too late. I'm sure the flights are going to be incredibly expensive today. But still, if that matters to you, today is the day, right? The airline abandoned a decades-long luggage policy, which is true, that execs have described to last fall as key to differentiating the budget carrier from its rivals. And I think this is a really important sentence, right? What were the two bags fly free key to differentiating the carrier, or was it the fact that it's budget? And having two benefits on an airline is honestly probably not necessary in a market that has basically four airlines. And so I think that it's a super interesting calculus. I've made the same calculus also for a company based in Texas for a death services company. They had a decades long differentiator, which was a price matching policy that we ended up advising them to eliminate when I was working at Bain for them. And basically, it was a very similar calculus. And we put it in a spreadsheet, and it was like, how many customers can you afford to lose if you just stick to your guns on pricing, if you extract a little bit more on a per customer basis, and then if you focus on things that customers really value, because they were concerned that we were just going to price gouge customers. What we said was, no, we're going to price align customers. And what we're going to do is make sure that the customers that are paying you are getting exactly what they paid for. So you're not thinking about how to remove services from them, but rather how to add services to your frequent flyers. Anyhow, over to you. What do you think about this change for Southwest? And what do you expect to see? What kind of metrics would you look at for this kind of situation?
Yeah, well, before I dive into that, Jenny Ray, I think fundamentally what Southwest figured out is that they were giving too much away for free. There was really no differentiation between the fare classes either. Right? Like the want to get away plus, the business select, like you got two free check bags in every fare class. You got your choice of seat in every fare class. And so you're right, like what Southwest is trying to do, the first thought I had is, oh, they want you to trade up to a higher fare class. Like they want Jenny Ray to pay for economy plus, right? Or whatever they're going to
Never
call
going to
it.
happen though, but I love,
Yeah.
I, I love where they're thinking. Yeah,
Right, right.
totally.
Versus economy, because like I'm going to take away something that the frequent flyer might care about. That's number one. Number two, they want to incentivize whether it's you and me or whether it's the person who flies 3 or 4 times a year to sign up for the credit card,
Absolutely.
right? So that they can monetize their spend year round. Even if you take two flights with Southwest, you now become an incredibly valuable customer for them because they're getting a cut of every transaction you make on that card. And so that's why you've seen every other airline load up their credit cards with perks. There was I looked at the numbers a couple of years ago. I don't know if this is still true, but I think back in 2022, American Airlines lost money flying planes. They were only profitable because of their rewards program and their credit card program. And so they were literally a credit card company that was flying planes. And
This is the
so,
thing. And like that was actually one of the former MC coaches is in charge of that program at Delta. Same, right? Like Delta is literally a front for a credit card company.
mhm,
And I remember having that realization. My dad worked for a company that ended up going bankrupt largely because they didn't have a large enough credit card subscription, but they were a retail company. If you've ever been offered at like a Foot Locker or at a kind of Macy's, right? Hey, like, do you want to sign up for our credit card? They were doing the same thing. Even in retail, it was like the retail store wasn't profitable, but the credit card was.
mhm, mhm. And the third thing I would just say is I'd push back on the fact that Southwest is budget now. At least in the markets I fly to, I find them to be like incredibly kind of even on price with the big three. And really the differentiator I think for most flyers is just like, do you get me where I want to go at like the lowest possible price, not like orders of magnitude lower than everyone else, like at the lowest possible price and like in the most hassle-free way. And so I think what they figured out is like the bags were a nice to have, but for like most people, that's not the deciding factor in terms of like which airline I choose, unless I'm like moving cross country. Right? There are specific use cases for it, but generally speaking, like who gets me to where I want to go fastest and at the best possible price? And I think Southwest figured out, look, we can maybe still undercut our rivals a little bit on ticket fare if we're charging back prices, and we can provide people with a superior experience, and they'll still choose us. And so that's the grand experiment. And I think in a market where there are incredibly high barriers of entry, you don't need policies like free bags to differentiate because there's only 3 or 4 other options for anybody to take, and there are easier and cheaper ways for you to differentiate.
So let me just add one thing though that I do think is going to change significantly on Southwest this summer. And it's a course that I took in college around operations planning. And what I realized was that it's possible that this was originally a marketing tactic, right? Like two bags fly free, but it wasn't a differentiator actually
Their
starting.
turnaround time is going to get longer.
That's it. Because
Yep.
now, right now, when I board, basically nobody is standing there trying to find a space for their bag because the bags are all underneath the plane, and they checked them beforehand. They're not trying to bring two big bags on the plane, so they're not trying to shove that bag in. That's definitely never going to fit. There's not the area, the overhead carriers are never full inside the Southwest Airlines, and that was a big part of when everybody was like, "Oh, like this open seating policy, it's a great thing. I can can pick where I sit on the plane and I don't have to worry about pre-booking. Like, no, like all they were doing was shortening their gate times to 25
Hmm.
minutes.
Hmm.
And so if you can't fly that plane, let's call it 2 or 3 extra times a day because you're going to have to now extend your boarding process. I mean, they've calculated this in. I'm not saying that they haven't. I'm just saying that like they're assuming that they actually will also have to fly less in
Hmm.
order to make the same money or more money. And you're going to see fewer Southwest turns per plane every single day. One of the immediate first changes that they made to compensate for that is that they started flying red eyes.
Hmm.
Right. So originally the planes were all grounded from that like kind of midnight to 5 a.m. period. And so flying the red eyes gives you a turn or two back in
It
order to,
you're almost stealing a leg that you wouldn't have had
that's
otherwise.
exactly
And
right. Yeah.
and I think you're right. That's exactly because the turnaround times are going to get longer. It's not just because people are going to be putting bags up, but now you have to find a specific seat. Now you're going to have to argue with someone who's in your seat accidentally. Like none of that's happening right now. And a big part of the reason that Southwest was profitable for 50 straight years was number one, they served routes point to point. Like they never went with a hub and spoke model. So they had less competition on the routes they served. And number two, they really focused on efficiency. Their kind of like turnaround time for planes from like landing to getting back up in the air was the shortest in the industry for a long time. Every minute a plane's on the ground, like you are bleeding cash. And so they figured that out really, really early. And it's going to be interesting to see like when you have boarding groups and premium seating and people throwing up check bags, what that experience is going to be like as a customer. But you're right, like they figured out, okay, like the incremental lift from fees is going to be higher than the money we're going to burn from having planes on the ground a little bit longer.
And I think their fundamental gamble is we're not going to bleed customers, right? We're not going to bleed customers. This cherished thing was something that people liked but didn't come for. And so that's the question. So if I were an analyst tracking Southwest, I'm looking at passenger volumes. It's super smart for them to make these changes right in the beginning of summer, which is absolutely
Hmm.
peak period. And then I would especially be looking at credit card subs. How many people are signing up for a credit card now versus the ones that used to? I mean, Southwest wasn't even a feature in the airline credit card game. It was an asterisk, right? It was like not a part of the conversation. And I've had a card for a long time because I think if you're a high spend customer, Companion Pass is the best perk in the industry.
Hmm.
And so, some people have debated about whether those kind of perks will go away. I haven't seen any rumbles about that because I think that's exactly what they're thinking.
I mean,
But
that's
I'm
the kind of
curious
customer
to
you want to
see.
keep.
That's right. But I'm curious to see whether they're able to get back some of those customers that were thinking about leaving, and give them the perks in a different way. So it'll be interesting. Other fun things on here, right? They've built years of advertising campaigns. Does Southwest really have to advertise now? Am I like sitting there thinking about a flight? I mean, I'm searching it on Kayak. It's coming up. I'm searching it on
Well, they
after.
used to have to because they were never listed on third-party platforms.
I know they weren't, but
That.
that business decision was a big piece of what I think
Hmm.
the dominoes tumble.
Hmm.
So there's some other fun stuff in the article worth a read, but you have to think about it through a different lens rather than the consumer experience only.
Well, I could talk about airlines all day. I mean, they're one of my passions. I'll just say this for folks, like we did do like an almost hour-long breakdown on Southwest business model. We'll link to that episode in the description. So if you're interested in learning more about how Southwest makes money and how we would think about the business if we were leaders at Southwest, go check out that episode. Jenny Rae, anything else that you wanted to share today as we wrap up our time together?
No, I mean, I didn't know if you had something else that you want to do because I know that's not our normal, right? Usually it's kind of, hey, somebody's reporting earnings. This is a hallmark of what's happening, and even kind of like a headline buster. So it wasn't that today, but I still think that it's an important moment and also a PSA, right? Y'all should definitely go check out your Southwest flights if you haven't thought about it in advance. Well,
Well,
let's wrap
that's it.
up. And here's what we're gonna do, y'all. We're gonna be here every day this week, short week for us and for everybody. Our goal is gonna be to try to remember what day of the week it is as we're rolling out Market Outsiders. Like, is today Monday, Tuesday? It is Tuesday, but we'll see if we can keep that up all week long. And then we'll bring you some of the same spicy insights and information each day. If you've got something that you want us to cover or an industry you want us to pull apart, please reach out. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.